This video is brought to you by mybookie.ag. What's up, guys? We are here for a big fight night card headlined by Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. Two great lightweight contenders. Co-main event is between Jalin Turner and Bobby Green. Supposed to be Dan Hooker versus Green. Hooker got injured. His coach should not have talked as much as he did about injuries, man, because it's been not looking good for CKB. Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo, in my opinion, is the most exciting fight on the card. I think I might even like it better than the main event. Deiveson is the former flyweight champion, top contender in that weight class, going up against Rob Font, who's been a consistent top 10 of the bantamweight division. Davison's move up to bantamweight really makes me wonder how his power is going to translate. That's a very good fight. Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum, excellent fight as well. Kelvin's returning to 170. He's looking quite slim. He's been eating his veggies. New mythical fighter may have been unlocked. Disciplined Kelvin Gastelum. We got Figueiredo versus Joaquim Silva. That guy's gonna keep riding that bike until the wheels fall off. Beneil Dariush versus Dustin Stoltzfus is a good striker versus grappler matchup. Soriano is extremely powerful in the stand-up. Dustin probably doesn't want to stay there too long with this guy. Miesha Tate is back, going up against Julia Avila. It looks like this might be a change of another guard from Miesha Tate. How many torches does she have to pass around? Zachary Reese is an interesting prospect going up against Cody Brundage. Drakkar Klose is on the card. Shout out Kazoo. He's going up against Joe Selecki. Yeah, not a bad card overall. I would actually say the card is so good. If you slapped on a title fight on top of Beneil versus Arman, this is a proper pay-per-view card. So let's go through the fights outside of my featured ones. Figueiredo versus Joaquim Silva. I mean, I have to go with Joaquim. Figueiredo has been around for way too long. He's not looking too great. He's tough. He's a veteran with experience. I guess still well-rounded for 2009 standards. Joaquim Silva is much bigger than him. He hits so much harder. The guy even hurt Arman Tsarukyan. You would have to think Joaquim Silva gets it done, but Figueiredo fights go kind of crazy sometimes. Like watching him beat Michael Johnson a couple years ago. Nobody expected that to happen. Beneil Dariush versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I'm going to go with Beneil. Overwhelming Dustin in the beginning of the fight, getting that first round TKO. Dustin didn't look too great against Abus Magomedov, and Abus is not looking great either now. Abus put this guy away early in the first round, and I think Beneil could do a similar kind of thing. So Beneil and Abus strike completely differently from each other. But they both have a similar kind of early, quick pace, with some powerful strikes getting thrown out there. Beneil, I believe, is a little bit more overwhelming with his boxing, and I think that's where it can really do Dustin in. So I'm going with Beneil for that early knockout. Miesha Tate versus Julia Avila. Miesha Tate has not gotten a win since 2021 when she beat Marion Renault, and Marion Renault was 70 years old. Her last real credible win, like her real top win, was when she beat Holly Holm when McGregor fought Diaz. Ever since Holly Holm, she lost to Amanda Nunes, Raquel Pennington, beat Marion Renault, then lost to Caitlin Vieira and Lauren Murphy. She lost to Lauren Murphy. I'm definitely going with Julia Avila. She's so much of a better striker. I see her stuffing a couple of the takedowns. Maybe Miesha Tate can get one or two in there. But even on the ground, the game has evolved so much, I don't know if Tate has caught up to Avila's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. Then Zach Reese versus Cody Brundage. I'm going to go with Zach Reese in this one. His guillotines are pretty nasty. He has a good triangle off his back. He's a very tall and lanky middleweight. His striking is not super snappy. It's not too quick or anything like that, but he will throw a bunch of stuff out there like knees to your face without even hopping into those. Some head kicks here and there. He's fairly young in the game, right? Only has 6 professional fights, but so far he's shown a good, well-rounded skill set, enough to where I think Cody Brundage's wrestling can get countered. Cody Brundage also is not super tough, right? When things go wrong for him, he tends to, I don't know if I'll say quit on himself, but sometimes it looks like that. When you look at his Mikhail Alexiachuk fight, when you look at his William Knight fight, I didn't like what I was seeing out of him, man. So I do like Zach Reese, potentially even getting a guillotine against Cody Brundage's double leg. Drakkar Klose versus Joe Selecki. Klose has not been too active in the past few years, so he took like 2 years off after getting knocked out by Beneil Dariush. There were a bunch of fights they were trying to get put together with him. A lot of them did get canceled, but ultimately he did fight twice in the last 3.5 years. He looked good, especially against Brandon Jenkins, right? Still showing good power, still showing some decent boxing for his skill level. But Joe Selecki overall is an incredibly good grappler. I mean, this guy beat Donald Cerrone in a grappling match. He had a very good rear naked choke in his last fight. It just all comes down to, can Drakkar Klose defend the takedowns? And I don't know if he will. Rafa Garcia took this guy down a few times. Beneil Dariush took him down. Christos Giagos took him to the ground. Bobby Green took him down. You know, Lando Venata, etc. There's a bunch of guys that took Drakkar close to the ground. And Joe Selecki is so dangerous at getting your back. I'm probably going to go Joe Selecki, but I'm not surprised either way this fight goes. I can see Drakkar close winning as well. It's a very close one. It just all comes down to, can he stop the takedowns and can he get up? That's all he needs, man. Those two defenses. Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa. This should be a fun striking match unless Garcia tries to take the fight to the ground. Costa is an incredible dynamic striker with good traditional martial arts techniques. He has an insane spinning back kick. Insane. And he will even fake his hands motioning the opposite direction before turning the other way for the kick to the body. He even finished an opponent with that exact same sequence. He has good spinning back fists. He's extremely quick. Good hooks over the top, good counter punches. Sometimes can get a little bit out there with trying to trade with his opponent, and I don't know if he wants to go that direction with Steve Garcia. Steve Garcia has okay boxing fundamentals, good at lining up his power hand, just like we did against Chase Hooper, who, I mean, let's be honest here, not that great of a striker. I think the biggest issue with Steve Garcia is distance management here, is to get in on Costa and mix up the wrestling with the boxing. Throw out some good leg kicks here and there, but ultimately, hands and hips. That's all he's got to focus on, man. His own hands and the opponent's hips. Right? We did see Costa get submitted pretty easily against Thiago Moises. So that should be a path for Steve Garcia to tackle. So it's a tough fight to call. I think if the fight stays on the feet too long, Costa might get the better of Steve Garcia. Garcia does have good boxing to find some of his own punches in there. He can absolutely catch Costa with a 1-2. But if Garcia gets some good takedowns in there, things could really work out for him. He got a couple good takedowns against Antiveros and even took down Luis Pena. Ultimately, my prediction for this, it's almost 50-50 for me. I'm ultimately going to go with Costa, but I am not ruling out Steve Garcia whatsoever. I do believe Steve Garcia is also a big underdog going into it. Ihor Peteria versus Rodolfo Bellato. Definitely going Bellato, 100%. He's powerful. Ihor doesn't have much of a chin. Ihor is a wild one sometimes, man. He'll throw some crazy winging punches out there, just like he did against Oldberg, man. He threw that big lead overhand, overextended, and got dropped for it. He does against Bellato. I think Bellato KOs him. Wellington Turman versus Jared Gooden. This is going to be an interesting one. Wellington Turman doesn't really have a chin. He's been around for a long time. He got KO'd a couple times. I mean, getting knocked out by Andrew Sanchez the way he did is insane, because Andrew Sanchez is not much of a striker. But I would say that he has better offensive technique than Jared Gooden, and he has some decent jiu-jitsu that can threaten Gooden if it goes to the ground. Jared Gooden fights like a bodybuilder. He's so stiff, but he generates incredible amount of power. I forgot who he fought on the regional scene. I think it was DeMarcus Jackson, the fight before Carlston Harris, if I'm not wrong. And he touched this guy with like a punch that didn't have much rotation or snap, and he put that guy on skates. His leg kicks against Randy Brown were very powerful as well. It's just he doesn't have great technique. So I think Wellington Turman should get the better technically of Jared Gooden, but I am not ruling out Jared Gooden knocking this guy out. So he definitely has a big puncher's chance against Wellington Turman. And then finally, Jamie Lynn Horth versus Veronica Hardy. I'm going to go with Veronica Hardy. This fight is very close though. It could go either way. Horth has the length, the height. She has good knees in the clinch, some decent Muay Thai skills at her skill level. Veronica Hardy, I think, hits harder overall. She has a good Taekwondo background, kicks extremely hard, has good dexterity overall, good movement as well, but just she has to avoid clinching up too much unless she could get some punches over the top on her taller opponent, because Horth, not super snappy. She's got good body kicks. She's got good leg kicks, good knees, a good jab to the body as well. She fights fairly well from distance, but at that range, she's gonna be in line of sight of Veronica's kicks, which come out extremely powerful. That low side kick to the knee could be devastating against Horth, who tends to walk in straight lines sometimes. And the way that Hardy throws it, she's not just like snapping it from stance the way like John Jones does. She will bounce around and hop into your knee, which can cause some great amount of damage. So I'm ultimately gonna go with Veronica Hardy. And with that, the prospect of the night, I mean, there's really only like 3 maybe on the whole card. I'm going to go with Zach Reese. He's fairly well-rounded. He has some good submissions, some decent striking, inexperience in the game so far, so he can learn a lot. The fighter of the night, I honestly think is Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo is the only former champion on the whole card. He's the highest ranked fighter on the card. He's making his move up to 135, a move he should have made a long time ago. I think most of the eyes on the card is going to be on Figueiredo to see how he performs. Because if he beats Rob Font, he's going to be fighting top 5 guys and not too far removed from a title shot. A couple wins and he's there. The stake of the night, the fighter that is in hot waters, is Miesha Tate. If she loses to Julia Avila, I think that's it for her. She's been around for a long time, not looking great out there either. She's very dated with the way she fights. The banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight on the card, I think it's actually Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo. It could also be Jalin Turner versus Bobby Green. But I think Font versus Figueiredo is going to be a very interesting boxing match, but Figgy might attempt some takedowns here or there. He should have seen the success that Corey Sandhagen had against Rob Font on the ground, but I do think the boxing between these two, and knowing how Figueiredo likes to test everybody in the stand-up, that's going to be an exciting fight. And then the fight of the night, I think, is the main event. Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan is overall the most technical fight on the card. Two well-rounded guys going at it, and we get to see if there's a change of the guard here. Beneil's been around for a very, very long time. He's much older than Arman, and if he loses this one, it might be it for him as a top contender of the lightweight division, and Arman takes that spot from him. But we're going to start with Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. Right off the bat, I think this is a great fight for Kelvin, stylistically. Sean Brady is a grappler with some striking to him, but he does not want to stand too much with Kelvin. Kelvin has a nuclear weapon in his left hand, and Belal Muhammad TKO'd Sean Brady. Belal Muhammad TKO'd Sean Brady. What would Kelvin do to him if he hits him with those kind of punches? This guy would have to retire. And I like Kelvin at 170 way better than 185. I think he's better in this weight class because he doesn't have that big wrestling weakness. At 185, some of those guys were able to bully him a little bit, like Chris Weidman did. And at 170, I mean, the only fight that showed a big wrestling weakness to him was Neil Magny, right? He got taken down a lot by Neil Magny. But that was around the time where Kelvin was not really disciplined. He was cutting too much weight because he just didn't want to lose the weight before cutting. But he fought good wrestlers like Johnny Hendricks, Tyron Woodley. He fought Jake Ellenberger. He got some decent takedowns at welterweight as well. It's just the middleweight division. I mean, look how many times he got out-wrestled. Tim Kennedy out-wrestled him. Chris Weidman out-wrestled him. Robert Whittaker completely out-wrestled him. I think a disciplined Kelvin Gastelum who's not cutting too much weight and he's taking it seriously is going to show a lot of resistance to the wrestling. Sean Brady might get him to the ground a couple times, but not before Brady gets inflicted a lot of damage. Sean Brady just does enough fundamentally in the stand-up. He's okay there. I think Kelvin is too fast with his hands, too powerful. He knows all Brady has for him are the takedowns, and I think he's going to stuff a bunch of them and catch him with the left hand, knocking him out in the second round. So I'm going to go with Kelvin Gastelum with a second round knockout. I think it's a good stylistic matchup for him. If he gets completely out-grappled, I mean, then he's got to make some decisions on what to do. Because if it's still happening to him at 170, then I don't know what to say about this guy. And as you can see on the betting odds, it's pretty much a pick'em. Then we go to Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo. It's very hard to predict how this is going to go down because we've never seen Deiveson up against guys as big as Rob Font. We never seen him at 135 either. Maybe his power's not the same. Maybe he hits harder. We have no idea. We know that he cut an extraordinary amount of weight to 125. So you would have to think that his power is even better at 135, considering that he's not killing himself to get to the weight class. And he's still cutting as much as many of the bantamweights. He's probably walking around in the 160s. Now, Rob Font has an excellent long jab. He has a reach advantage and can put Deiveson on the end of that punch the whole fight if Deiveson doesn't find his way in. We know Deiveson sometimes is able to slip on the inside of a jab and counter with the left shovel hook or go over the shoulder with his right overhand because both guys are going to be in orthodox. But Deiveson will sometimes switch into southpaw to find that left kick. Left body kicks on Rob Font could be devastating. He has some good leg kicks to go to as well, just in case Rob Font wants to box to them too much. And there is the body lock. Deiveson has a pretty decent trip in the clinch, and I'm pretty sure he's going to have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu advantage. This guy has extremely good offensive BJJ skills. Defensively, not too much. Offensively, yes. He's extremely hard to handle when he's on top of you. I can see Rob Font trying to line up some uppercuts against a shorter opponent, but I see his leg getting kicked out. I see him getting hit by some good power jabs and might get dropped by overhands from Deiveson. So ultimately, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Deiveson Figueiredo. I'm going to go with the underdog here. I'm believing in his power, man. Rob Font does get dropped a lot in his fights. He's never been finished by strikes, but he's gotten dropped a lot by Jose Aldo and Chito Vera, and both those fights are not that long ago. So I'm going to go Deiveson Figueiredo, and I'm going to go by a decision win, winning on the scorecards because of damage. Then we go to the co-main event, Jalin Turner versus Bobby Green. Jalin Turner is taking this fight on short notice. Green had a training camp. He was preparing for Dan Hooker, who also is a lanky, tall lightweight. Turner's the same way, but they fight completely differently. Jalin Turner stands a lot taller than Dan Hooker does, and just like Dan Hooker, he could be extremely reckless with his offense. Turner, though, is not as tough as Dan Hooker is. That was shown in the fight between them two. Hooker was able to tough his way through and beat Jalin Turner. The thing here though is, Turner does have good kicks, he has good knees, he has a good clinch game, he has a good jab from range. I think Bobby Green ultimately is a better boxer. He has some decent wrestling he can go to as well. And if he gets in the pocket with Jalin Turner, Turner's going to be in a lot of trouble, man. But I do think the plethora of techniques that Turner presents with his offense, all the elbows in close range, all the knees in the clinch, the jab from distance, the high kicks, some good leg kicks as well against Bobby Green's boxing stance, can cause a lot of damage. And if it gets on the ground, Turner has a nasty rear naked choke, good triangles off his back, good guillotine as well that he got on Brad Riddell. Even though he's taking this on short notice, I am going to go with the favorite because I think stylistically he could be pretty tough for Bobby Green. I'm going to go Jalin Turner, and I'm going to go by a third round submission. I think eventually he might drop Bobby Green with a knee to the face. And then we go to the main event. Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. Both guys are well-rounded. They can both grapple very well. Arman is definitely a much better wrestler, but Beneil is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappler. Both guys have good power in the stand-up. I think Beneil carries more heaviness in that power left hand. Arman has much better kicks. He has a very sneaky and fast high kick, good front kicks to the face. He's extremely flexible with his legs, and I think he ultimately does have better kicks than he does punches. He could be a bit wild with his boxing, even shown against Joaquim Silva. He got hurt by that guy. If he does something a little too risky with his hands against Beneil Dariush, he could get hit by the left hand and dropped. We saw Dariush was able to line that up on Mateusz Gamrot. He could do a similar kind of thing to Arman Tsarukyan. But I do think overall, Arman should get the better of the grappling. He is such a high-level wrestler, able to roll his way with Islam Makhachev, which to this day, the only guy that was able to do that at all was Charles Oliveira. I think Beneil Dariush will roll for a lot of stuff. He will attack the legs, attack the arms, try to reverse you at all times. He's fairly active off his back, and I think no matter what he tries, Arman is going to be way too heavy on top, landing good ground and pound shots, and ultimately win this fight in the 4th round through a TKO by ground and pound. Arman's gassed out a bit before, but I think he will pace himself because of Dariush trying to constantly line him up for the left hand, knowing this is a much higher level opponent. So I don't see him, or at least hopefully, he doesn't rush things like he did before. Or he does try that. He goes to try to bulldoze Dariush, and he won't get that late finish. He could probably get finished later if he does that, but he can also get a quick finish on Dariush, as Oliveira did as well. But both guys fight completely differently in their fighting styles. I am not ruling out Beneil's ability to catch him with the left hand. I think he's a little too big of an underdog, to be honest here. Arman makes a lot of mistakes in the stand-up, and he could get caught for it. And even on the ground, Dariush is extremely crafty, so do not rule out Beneil Dariush the way the odds are here. And you could capitalize on those odds by going to mybookie.ag. If you think Beneil is going to get the big upset, that's the place to go. If you think Arman is a lock, like a lot of people believe, MyBookie has the best odds for you, man. Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo is a very close fight on the odds. I personally think Julia Avila is a lock against Miesha Tate. I think Joe Solecki versus Drakkar Klose can go either way. I think Jared Gooden is a pretty decent underdog to look at. Not because he's skilled, because he's not, but it's because he has so much power and Wellington Turman doesn't have much of a chin. That's the only reason he's got that puncher's chance. So that's a fight I do recommend to do more research on. Costa versus Garcia can go either way in my opinion. I think Garcia is very much overlooked, even though I am going with Costa. There's a lot of stuff Garcia can work with here. If Punahele Soriano is going to beat Dustin Stoltzfus, the best way to bet on that is him to win by knockout, and it's most likely going to happen earlier than later, as that's how most of his fights go. This guy has a lot of first round knockouts in his career, and his last win was a 2nd round knockout. And of course, you could line up a parlay, fighters that you're confident in winning, to multiply your earnings. And my favorite way is to live bet. This is how you use your analytical skills. You're able to see how the fight plays out after like the 1st round or so, and then make a decision on who to bet on. This is, in my opinion, the best way to bet on fights, as it's not as much up to chance, it's more you're seeing how the fight is playing out and analyzing what's going on. And ultimately, MyBookie is giving you the sign-up deposit bonus, where they'll add 50% of your first deposit all the way up to $1,000. So if you put in, let's say 100, they'll give you another 50 on top of that to play with. It's going to come with the rollback withdrawal requirement that most of them have. And all you have to do is use the promo code WEASEL, that's W-E-A-S-L-E, to sign up for MyBookie's deposit bonus. So make sure to visit mybookie.ag today, where you can win big. And that's ultimately the end of the predictions, guys. It's a very good card, excellent fights throughout the whole thing. It's just missing a title fight to be a worthy pay-per-view card. That's how high the quality is for this card. And ultimately, I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions, and if you did, make sure to give this a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, leave in the comments below what are your guys' predictions for this card, and I'll see you guys in the next video.